No! Video games.
What up, dudes, and welcome back to the Yo Video Games Podcast. I'm Matt, and Andrew is sadly not with us today, so we're going to have a special guest on. I don't know, how do you want to introduce yourself? I'll let you decide.
I'm Michael Damiani from EasyAllies.
Yeah.
And glad to be here.
It's not your first time.
No.
Because we did one a long time ago.
At Andrew's place, I remember
Yeah.
three of us. We were talking about, there was some Zelda stuff.
It was the lore. It was a lore.
The lore,
cast.
yeah.
It was a lore cast.
That's what it was.
Yeah, that's what it was. Oh, yeah. Andrew is he recently got hitched, so he's probably out snorkeling, hiking, other various activities.
Having a better time than being stuck here
Well,
right now.
okay, yeah. I mean, he's obviously having a better time because he's. I don't know. I actually don't know where he is right now. So I'm assuming he's somewhere nice. I mean, usually you don't go on, you don't go to Mars, for your honeymoon or whatever. So
Not yet.
he's probably not doing that. He's probably not in some salt mine in Eastern Europe is all I'm saying.
Well,
But then he'll come back and tell me he was. And then I'll be like, well, why would you do that? And he'll be like, well, why? What, you don't want to do something crazy adventurous? And they'll make me look like some weirdo for not wanting to do some nutty, crazy, adventurous
I think they just know you too well
vacation.
and just like
They're
trolling
probably-
you at that point.
Yeah, I don't
But
know.
Congrats to both of them.
They're out.
Yeah.
They're out saving, I don't know, rhinos or something in the sub-Sahara or something. I don't know. They're doing something. Anyways, so cats away, mice are at play, and since Andrew got to do his, birthday podcast just a couple podcasts ago, I let him pretty much take control. Also, I should shout out before I get too far into this. That we usually have a dude of the week, and dude of the week will for this week is Dammit Reeves 94. So nice name.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dammit Reeves. And again, we're on Patreon for the Yo Video Games Podcast, or patreon.com/Yo Video Games Podcast. There usually will be, this podcast will eventually show up on Stitcher, SoundCloud, iTunes. However, I personally do not have access to that. So only the patrons will be seeing this. Patrons will get it early. And then, of course, for all the other people, you'll still be able to listen to it free. But if you're hearing this at a sort of delay because, you prefer Stitcher, SoundCloud, iTunes, I apologize. I don't have access to those accounts. So right now, hopefully this will be good enough for everyone listening right now. But thank you for Dammit Reeves. And yeah, so like I said, cats away, mice are at play. Andrew's not here, so we're just gonna talk about Zelda probably.
Is there anything else to talk about?
There is actually.
Oh.
There is because Monolith Soft turned 20 today, which is crazy to think about. 1999? That was that long ago. They
PS1 era.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know he Takahashi and his wife split-sewed from Square Enix or Squaresoft at the time.
Yeah.
After Xenogears, I didn't realize that they had founded Monolith Soft
So soon.
Yeah,
after that.
Like specifically Monolith Soft, not like, hey, I'm just kind of working freelance, or hey, we have some weird one how like a Sora Sakurai's company is literally like just Sakurai.
I wonder if
it's like 6 employees or something like that technically.
Yeah, I wonder if it's like a Studio Ghibli situation like with Nausicaa where they technically weren't Ghibli yet, but it was like the same people, but they still worked that into like their fold and when they celebrate their history.
I actually don't know the full scope of it. I know how things were like kind of like afterwards, because early 2000s they got picked up by Namco to do Xenosagas and stuff. And then that kind of fell apart. Basically, at some point, a couple years after they were working with Namco, apparently there was a huge shift in management. And I wonder if it was when Namco Bandai became like officially Namco Bandai Namco, whatever the fuck they're called.
That happened at the end of around 2009, 2010, I want to say.
Yeah, and I think that's, I don't know if that was it or whatever, but like, yeah, they basically have said on record that management and priorities changed within Namco, and it didn't become a very happy place for them to work. And then they ended up being sold off to Nintendo, which is there's an interesting story there about how Nintendo. There's a guy, I forget his name, but he's the guy who goes out and finds, his job, he says, is to find non-Nintendo games to put on Nintendo consoles. He's responsible for Bayonetta 2, Devil's Third, if anyone remembers that, and I think maybe even the Tokyo Mirage Sessions, or what that turned into, and I think he might have been involved in the hey, and I think it had something to do with Iwata being like, I don't have any JRPGs, and Square is obviously not super. They were like, we'll give you a bone, Nintendo, every now and again. But like even after Yamauchi was out of the picture and SquareSoft was on better terms with Nintendo, they weren't giving them royal treatment or anything. They weren't getting really the good stuff from Square.
We thought when that announcement happened that they were mending ways and that GameCube would finally be receiving, at that point, Square Enix's games, and we get the announcement of Crystal Chronicles.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, so we're going to get Final Fantasy 12 or Final Fantasy 10-2 or something. It's like, no, you're not getting any of those. You're getting, it was basically the excuse now is Nintendo systems aren't powerful enough, so you get offshoots. You don't get the main lines. But back then, the GameCube was at parity with the other systems pretty much, and their excuse is this is a game experience better catered for your audience. And
a little patronized there.
Yeah.
They did kind of get I guess you could say they kind of eventually got really good support in Dragon Quest.
Yes.
For the DS, when became a DS franchise. But that was only significant to one region. And Nintendo tried really hard to make Dragon Quest a thing, leading up to 9's release, with the re-release of 4, 5, 6, and 9, but it never took hold. They're basically, history's repeating itself right now again. They're trying to make 11 a thing, and it's I think 11's done better, but it's not hitting them Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy numbers.
I haven't seen anything, but anecdotally, there's seem to be a lot. I feel like there's a lot more people chattering about Dragon Quest XI S than there was when it originally came out last year on PC and PS4.
And honestly,
it's kind of interesting.
I think a lot of that isn't due to the fact that, and this is weird. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass. I feel like the Switch has positioned itself more as a JRPG machine than the PS4 did. PS4 had 15, of course. And it had first dibs on Dragon Quest XI and stuff, but we didn't see. We saw a lot of Tales games on PS4, but they weren't particularly beloved Tales games necessarily. They've got Tales of Budget coming out next year.
Tales of Arise?
Yeah.
Why do you call it Tales of Budget? Does it actually look budget?
Well, no, it looks like it has a budget.
Oh, okay. Now it makes more sense. I was going to say, wait a second. Aren't they going more all out with this one?
And I'm not the one who coined that phrase. And even I thought, wait, I thought this looked better. I'm oh, you mean Tales of we finally have a budget.
Gotcha. Makes more sense now.
But in a way, I feel like the Switch, because the Switch came out not with a JRPG, but it launched with Breath of the Wild, which was as close to a JRPG as you can get without being a JRPG, if that makes sense. And then within the first year, got Xenoblade 2, going back to Monolith Soft, and then there was what was it, Lost Sphere, or some other boring-ass Tokyo RPG Factory game launched with it.
Yeah,
I Am Setsuna.
I Am Setsuna was the first one.
Yeah.
Lost Sphere, and then Oninaki was the most recent one. Yeah, I feel like it's gotten a good share of JRPGs, not just newer ones, but also through their eShop. They keep putting some classics on there. Just this week, we got Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3 on there as well.
And they're all weirdly different prices.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do feel it does lend itself to having a lot of JRPGs. Yeah. I wouldn't say PS4 is any less, but
yeah, I don't know. Not I guess I wouldn't say not on a quantity level, but I think in the mind share, a lot of people are kind of if I get a JRPG, I'll just get it for my Switch. I see that happening, with a small game, but anecdotal. Ys 8. It's sold pretty well on PS4, but it's also sold really well a year later on the Switch.
People honestly,
shit. Yeah, I want it on my Switch.
I mean, it goes. I think it's more just JRPGs. I think it's just a Switch effect where people like taking their games on the go and they're willing to wait because there's so many great games coming out, or just in general.
Yeah.
I feel like there's way more games coming out in the last few years. A lot of games that people are saying you have to play, and it doesn't feel like there's necessarily this big of a rush to play all of them at once. So like for me, I've been a part of this too. Hollow Knight is my game that I did this with. Came out on PC, all these accolades, game like a Metroidvania game genre I really love. Totally ignored it. I know people were telling me it was good. Ignored it. Comes out on Switch. I'm all excited for it. Get into it. I'm like, yeah, this game's great and stuff. People are like, why didn't you? If you knew about this, why didn't you just play it earlier? It's like, because I wanted to like play it in handheld mode anywhere I want to go and stuff. So also, I had so many games to play. It's like it's a 1-2 punch. I think of those two elements, and I could see that with Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest came at a time, the fall of last year, usually a very heavy time of the season with so many games to play. And I think people are like, yeah, let's. I can play this later. I heard it's a long game. I'm gonna come back to it later.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't any better time. This month has been ridiculous. One of the most insane months. But who knows? You know, for JRPG fans, maybe this was like the time they were waiting for it.
I don't even. Is it out on Switch yet, or is it still to come out?
September 27th. It came out this past Friday.
Oh.
Yeah.
My readers,
Dragon Quest 11, right?
Right. Yeah. 11. Elusive Age, whatever. Yeah.
Yes, it's out.
The long time our patrons know I will not, when we know why I will not be participating in the game on personal grounds, but I do think that you're right. There's been strangely more eyes on it for the S edition, for Switch edition, which is interesting. But yeah, like at the time back in 2000, it was kind of a dark time in 2000. Well, let's. Not for Nintendo. Like, Nintendo was, like, okay for as far as hardcore gaming goes, but, like, when Nintendo bought Monolith Soft, because we established they started in 99, which is crazy to me, but, like, they were bought by Nintendo in, I think, 2007. So when that happened, we're in the dark days of the Wii as far as, like, hardcore gaming goes, and we remember those press conferences very well. So... yeah, I think what happened was, like, Iwata had even said, and somewhere in Iwata asks, and he had this guy who goes out and gets, like, non-Nintendo games. He's like, I don't have any JRPGs.
For the system.
Yeah, and Square was not at the time really doing much in the way of support for Nintendo. Here's Chocobo's Mystery Dungeon.
Here's the Crystal Bears that got delayed and sent to die in like a late December, like 2010
I remember
release
that.
or something. 2009.
I actually
2010.
I enjoyed the game, but it was delayed for like fucking 6 years.
Yeah, and just like Bayonetta 1 released at a terrible time of the year.
Yeah. So they were like, we don't have any JRPGs, and then they scoop up Monolith Soft. According to them, they were in a really bad place morally when they got picked up by Nintendo.
Okay.
And they basically like were kind of feeling like, I guess because for them they felt like they failed the Xenosaga because it's supposed to be 6 games and it ended up being compressed down into 3. I would argue those games weren't good at all to begin with. So to me it's like like even if I mean I don't not wish ill on the company, but I find it super fascinating that Xenosaga was a game that embraced the cinematic nature of video games because Metal Gear Solid came out and made everything want to be a fucking movie. And then Xenosaga fully embraced that to the nth fucking degree. And it didn't take off. And instead of being like, we just kind of want to keep making movie games, being David Cage of Japan, Takahashi seemed to like take a step back and go, you know what? I don't think these kind of games work, either for him or for whatever. So when Monado got started, as it was originally called, it was like, we're going to make the ultimate JRPG. But he was taking a lot of influence from outside of JRPGs. He even straight up was saying, like, he felt at the time like his game was vastly inferior to the big Western RPGs that were coming out at the time, even though it was kind of trying to take some cues from them, because he felt like, okay, I did the movie thing and burned himself out, got kind of like burned out. And then, so Xenoblade was this basically taking everything they've learned and then changing, like really changing. And I think it was much for the better. In my personal opinion, was because I feel like the Blade series is vastly superior to all the other Xeno series, including Gears. And I've gone back and played Gears, and it's like, man, the pacing on this game is not good, even in the first disc, let alone the second.
Yeah.
Great music. I will give kudos to the original Xenogears in that it did try to go for a darker, more heady story. I don't think it succeeded, but it went for it. Which there's some commendableness in that. Kind of like Star Wars prequels,
Yeah.
Look, the prequels were not good, but they were different. We can at least say they were different, if not good.
I always remember just for the combat, the button input system, like fighting game inputs to do,
which is
and then
pretty
learning
cool.
to do stuff. Yeah.
And then they get real tired of it because you just do the best combo move and you never do any of the other. Why would you ever do any of the shorter combos after learning the big ones?
And the mech fights.
Yeah. So either way, congrats on them for getting to 20 years. And
oh yeah,
the weird thing about Monolith Soft is they went from being sort of like a side JRPG studio.
Yeah.
Now they're kind of one of the most vitally important studios Nintendo owns.
Yes.
Because I argue that for Breath of the Wild, I feel the best parts of that game are mostly due to Monolith Soft. 60% of Monolith Soft worked on Breath of the Wild. They provided the engine, they designed the map. So basically, that Hyrule, that open world of Hyrule, is thanks to Monolith Soft. The ability to make it and create it, and then level design it. So to me, that's like the best part of that game, and it's been very, very good for Zelda, because I feel kind of like Xenosaga. You had Skyward Sword, and it went for this sort of like, we're going really into the story. The story's going to be really important, and it's really bad. And the gameplay's really kind of, I don't know, like, not shrunk down, but like, it's just 3 zones, and you kind of just go to the 3 zones. Like, they had really taken away the exploration element of Zelda by the time they got to Skyward Sword. So Breath of the Wild was like a complete 180 course correction in a way, where it's like, okay, we did the fully guided experience. There's no real exploring, or not much anyways. Very cinematic heavy. We did that, and they kind of like the reception for as many Wiis that were out there in the wild, the amount of sales for Skyward Sword did not match up, I would say. Now that's just a fact also of it being so much later into the Wii's life, I'd argue, because it was like 2000. Like, when
did Skyward Sword come out?
Yeah, like 11.
2011. Yeah,
like the Wii was kind of dead by the time Skyward Sword came out. Like, it was.
Yeah, we knew about Wii U coming. It was. I mean, they did a lot to kind of like push that game. It was the 25th anniversary of Zelda. They did like that 25th anniversary concert. They were pushing all that stuff, and I think it just underperformed ultimately. And I think honestly, if there's one reason to pick why, we both have like kind of like similar complaints about that game.
Yeah.
I don't. That was after you played it. I think straight up, it was just the motion controls. Too many people were scared of going into a fully motion controlled, fully embraced motion controls with not just waggle anymore, but trying to replicate 1-to-1 sword movement. And they said like not just for sword combat, but for solving puzzles. And I think at that point, motion controls had worn out their welcome.
Oh yeah,
I think everyone was kind of like, can we go? There were still some supporters of it, but I think a lot of people had moved on. Hey, we had a good time with it. Can we move? Can we get more traditional controls? But they hadn't really done that with Zelda yet.
Yeah,
like, Twilight Princess wasn't fully embracing motion controls. It's kind of just tacked on. And they really felt passionate. You know how they get when they're like, we feel this is our vision for a game.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want to deviate from it. And it just came out, I think, too late. I think it come out a few years earlier, like 2009. It might have done a lot better.
It might have, yeah.
But it just came out so late in that cycle, as you pointed out.
My issue, too, was more that Skyward Sword's motion controls didn't add anything to the combat. Like, some people are like, oh, it made the combat visceral. I'm like, here's the thing. In Twilight Princess, you go back to, like, the GameCube version of that. To do horizontal slashes, you press a button. To do vertical slashes, you hold the L trigger and press the attack button. To do stabs, you hold the L trigger, hold forward, and then press the attack button. He does a stab. The only singular thing the motion controls added were diagonal swipes. Mm-hmm. It was just diagonal swipes, which could have easily just been done by like holding back an L with the attack button on the GameCube. I feel like there wasn't really that much differentiated to the combat, because it wasn't like when you were fighting like the Scorpion boss or even Girahim or whatever, it wasn't like you needed to have complex motions with the motion, it was usually horizontal, vertical, diagonal, or a stab, which they had everything but diagonals in the old combat systems. So, to me, it was like these don't really add anything. They're just kind of there to justify the length of time you've spent developing the game, kind of thing. So, but anyways, it got to Breath of the Wild, and to me, it was like course correction. They were like, okay, people they couldn't do motion controls because the Wii U didn't have it innately. They could have maybe tried if it was a Switch only game. God, I hope they would not take that into account.
Technically, they could technically have done motion controls on Wii U.
Well, you'd have to
they use a Wii remote. Maybe you'd use a Wii remote.
Yeah, which
they're not doing that.
They weren't going to do that anyways. But yeah, there was a lot of other things that were like, okay, even irregardless of motion controls, people really weren't thrilled with most of how Skyward Sword played out. So, although the weird thing is for me was, like, I don't know if you remember this, there was an early direct in the Wii U's life where Aonuma said, I want to change up the Zelda formula with 2 major key features.
Yeah.
Tackling dungeons in any order and then playing it alone. Like he wanted to add multiplayer and any order dungeon.
And it didn't come to pass.
No, everyone's kind of forgotten about that, but whatever multiplayer or ad hoc Dark Souls messaging, whatever he had planned for Breath of the Wild got dropped hard. And tackling the dungeons in any order was like, sure, there's fucking 4. And you could go to the last one.
You're saying
too.
about this in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought the quote you're talking about was for Skyward Sword.
No, it was for Breath of the Wild.
Because they did say something before Skyward Sword that they wanted to break up the Zelda formula with this game.
Yeah,
which is why historically I was so skeptical of Breath of the Wild, is because Aonuma had said before, prior to Skyward Sword, he made these promises before that we're going to shake up the Zelda formula. I understand that people want to see a deviation from that. And if Skyward Sword was their answer to this, I was like, they didn't deliver on this promise at all. With Breath of the Wild, it's like, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
And obviously, what you're showing me is more ambitious, but does it ultimately add up to that? And yeah, as you're saying, they doubled down on those promises. But
they dropped the whatever multiplayer aspect he had in his head is gone.
Well,
this was the same direct where they announced the Wind Waker HD.
Yeah. I think, honestly, multiplayer, there's a lot of things that weren't present in Breath of the Wild. And I think it was simply because the game was so ambitious and they were just trying to get the new core formula correct and the foundation established so they could build upon it, which obviously they said they're going to do. They're going to we got a sequel coming. Even before that, they said we're going to get more games like this. There's a whole bunch of stuff we could talk about with it, but I think the reason is they focus on what was more important. The message for this game is the freedom to go anywhere. This is really an open world Legend of Zelda game, and to that extent, they got it right, very right.
Yeah, so that's actually kind of what, the main subject I guess I was getting at for this podcast was just I call it the Zelda State of the Union. So where are we with the franchise right now? Because Link's Awakening Remake just came out. We both played it to death. I've beaten it, hero mode, normal mode. Here's the surprising thing. I've not hunted all the new heart pieces or shells.
Okay.
Kind of saving that for a plane trip. And I've not done any of the Dompe dungeons.
So you haven't done any of the chamber dungeons?
No chamber dungeons, because I just don't care.
You can't get all the hearts or seashells if you don't do it.
Right. I know that. I know that's also part of it. I'm like, I just don't care because there's no real reward for it. And I heard the end game reward for doing everything with the chamber dungeons is super not worth it.
I mean, okay, so there are multiple difficulty tiers. They do it by shovels. 1 shovel easiest, 2 shovel, 3 shovel, and then they have a 3rd gold shovel. The gold shovel stuff only rewards you with rupees. If you're looking for the tangible rewards that will actually help you towards 100% completion, you just have to go through the 1 through 3 ones. And there's only 4 or 5 challenges in each. It's not too long. The last tier is very long, but yeah, there's no tangible rewards. I got a lot to say about Chamber Dungeon, but I want to let you finish what you were saying, though.
No, that kind of was it. I didn't do them because there was nothing to it.
So on that point, there's they kind of touted it as a Zelda Maker Light, or that's how it's getting tossed around, and it's not really that. there was the quote that said AJ Miyamoto was asked by Miyamoto or someone to put like a Mario Maker like element of gameplay into a new Zelda, and that's how Chamber Dungeon came about. And honestly, all this mode makes me want a real Zelda Maker, because this isn't very comprehensive. If you're looking for the creativity and the complete control over all the elements, like they have pre-established rules to simplify it. You only get existing rooms from dungeons, and you cannot reorganize them or anything like that. You're just going to arrange them in like a pieces. They're called basically pieces.
Yeah,
it's like a puzzle game, Simmons. Yeah. It's basically a puzzle. These modes, these challenges ask you to take the existing pieces you have. You unlock more of them as you beat more dungeons, or buy more of them, or use amiibos in the most bullshit way to get new ones as well. And they'll be like, they range from easy to like just make a functional dungeon with an entrance boss and keys, to this you have to fill in all the spaces we've given you here, and they all have to be stairway rooms, and it's like they have to all connect. You're like, what the hell? It's like this zigzag crisscrossing thing, but like you can't control like what stair goes to where. Like the rule is, however, the closest two stairs will always connect to each other, and if they're at the end of the screen, they'll wrap around the screen. It's like the shortest distance, like think of Final Fantasy map style, like where you'll scroll over.
It feels like it defeats the purpose of the stairways.
You can't pick where keys appear. It's always the first chest that you open will be a key until as many keys as needed to complete the dungeon. The last chest you open, no matter which order you open them in, will always be the nightmare key. You can't put a map and compass in there. You already have access to seeing that stuff. So it's very light, Simmons. It doesn't have a lot of stuff in it. And it's more about the satisfaction I got from it was solving the puzzle. Like, actually constructing the levels. Like, was the fun part, especially the more difficult ones. It's like, it's a jigsaw puzzle. And I was like, okay, this is cool. But then you got to play them to earn the rewards. And some of them like are really tedious and long and not fun.
Don't use a sword.
And you have to unlock, I think it's like the first or second tier you have to complete, or even unlock the free creator mode, where you can just like, you have a full grid of blank blocks and you can make whatever the heck you want.
Ah, I see. Yeah. Here's the thing. That leads me to like, okay, like, this I don't really know how I feel, because this argument's been done to death, but does the Dompe's dungeon, does the added heart pieces and seashells, does the heroes mode, does it add up to being like, you know, a full $60 game? Like, I feel like it's still I'm two minds of it, where I'm like, it's like my favorite game, so it absolutely is worth $60.
Yeah,
but it's like it's hard to ignore the fact that it is $6 on the 3DS right now. So it's like, look, if you can comfortably afford it on the Switch, go for it. If you can't, go for the 3DS version for a tenth of the price, because you will not miss a single drop of content besides that chamber dungeon stuff. You will not miss any content. You'll get more story technically, because they took away the photo booth stuff.
Yeah.
They added one in. They added one in on the, well, that's the one on the eShop. So it's like,
oh, it is the DX version? Okay.
Yeah, they added one of the DX photo moments.
Yeah, I saw that.
They kept it in there even though there's no photo element to it.
It's Lincoln Marin looking out.
Yeah, on the cliffside. So it's like, that's still there, which is like, well, if you were going to save one, that would be the one to do it. So, but yeah, you're not going to miss any story. You're not going to miss any actual game content if you get the DX version for a tenth of the price.
It's an interesting conundrum, honestly, because one part, regardless, I know there's differing opinions on the visual style, but regardless of that part of it, I like the more amount of detail they put into the world, like the people's homes,
I'm
like
really
the stuff they put inside
with
of them.
The homes,
I love that. So it adds a little bit more flavor to the world. It's not. It feels brought to life a little bit better that way, like the people's homes. The control scheme. Like, I love not having to toggle a million times between items. It's probably the most infuriating thing about the original game. Probably its biggest weakness. Yeah. And I really love having everything mapped out. But there are also like there's like, it's give and take, pretty much is what you were saying, and like I agree with that. There are some things they took away that I wish they didn't take away. There's some things they gave that I really love that aren't in the original version. It's like, to me, I feel like there's a third version. They'll never make this. That takes the best of both and makes like the definitive version. And
I mean, when I look at it as a whole, what we have is not bad, because it's a very faithful recreation of an already existing game and my favorite game. But I am also like, I do feel it is a massively wasted opportunity to make a fully fledged Resident Evil 2 style remake, like a Final Fantasy 7 remake style, like a full reimagining of the game, like completely redoing it, not making sure everything is 1-to-1, but like a complete rehaul of the game, like Resident Evil style, like what Final Fantasy 7 style, like. I do feel like I really would have liked to have seen that. Now, there was way more potential for fucking it up if you went full, RE2 remake style. But I kind of would have been okay with it, even if it was like a screw up, because I always have the original. Original's never going to go anywhere, so I was like, yeah, I kind of wish they were a little bit more daring with their remake. Now, I don't mean like daring like, oh, well, we added a new dungeon, we added a tiny new area of the island. I mean like a full reimagining, not you taking mostly the same game and then adding a few pieces here, not like the color dungeon thing, not like that. But you pointed out too, I don't know if Grezzo's the company to do that.
Well, I mean, they could have done it at the very least. So I'm of the opinion, Simmons, when you're doing a reimagining, you need to go all out. You need to be like RE2 remake or Final Fantasy 7 remake. I think you need to be that ambitious. Otherwise, to me, it's kind of like, what's the point? Are you as a developer? I mean, I don't want to speak for them, but do you want to challenge yourselves to like try and reinterpret a game for a new generation? But at the same time, I do like classic like updates when they're tasteful, but I don't think this was. It's weird because Shadow of the Colossus is the one I love to point to. The remaster of that. That is beautiful, and I loved every bit about that. There's some parts people don't like, control-wise stuff.
That's another one of those very faithful remakes.
Yes. Link's Awakening, I think deep down, I would have personally preferred like a sprite-based, like a brand new sprite-based one.
Oh,
that would have been more analogous to what I'm talking about. So this is something like half-step measure, Simmons, to me.
Yeah.
It's in between. I still really like it. I'm on the side that likes the visual style. I wish they could have ironed out the performance issues. Like if you took
super bizarre.
If they took away those, I think there'd be a little less discord, a negative discord about it. But I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Simmons, Grezzo. They could have taken the Ocarina of Time 3D engine and made Link's Awakening, reimagined Link's Awakening in that way at least, and made it more
it's a full 3D explorable kind of thing. Some people are like, I don't know if that would have worked. I'm like, well, you wouldn't do it 1-to-1. You wouldn't just take because you could theoretically take the game we have here and then just move the camera down behind Link's shoulder, and it's technically gonna be, it could play like Ocarina, but I'm not talking about that. I mean like actually redesign the stuff. So I would have preferred that because. Fail or succeed, it would have been at least something a little different. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the Polly Pocket aesthetic of the game, but like, I think at the end of the day, it's still a good, like everything there is still really good.
I feel like
it's still a damn good game. I still highly recommend playing this video game. Like, I don't think you're gonna have a bad time playing the game at all. Like, but here's the weird thing about it. Did you notice there was an interview with Enuma this year where he basically flat out admitted he teased the game in 2016?
Oh yeah, I saw that he dropped the.
So here's the funny thing about that, which goes back to my original theory. This was a 3DS game. This absolutely was at one point a 3DS game. If it was in development in 2016, but regardless of that fact, that means this game has been. They've basically been doing it, or at least known about it. It's been in the cooker for a while.
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild 2 is interesting because it doesn't look like it's going to radically alter the landscape of Breath of the Wild 1. I feel like it's going to be mostly the same map, just with changes done to it. And then they're going to add like an underworld or some shit. Because there was like weird flashes of like dungeon entrances that look very Zelda 1-ish. And the whole little, the castle floating up into the sky at the end of that teaser. So I'm kind of like, where is that secondary Zelda team? What have they been doing? The Link Between Worlds people, because they didn't do Link's Awakening, so that's a little weird. We knew what Grezzo's doing, and they've been doing it for potentially a very long time. And more Monolith Soft than ever employees are working on Breath of the Wild 2 now. So what Breath of the Wild sold way too well for them to just be like, oh, that's fine, great, we'll see you in like 6 years for the next Zelda game. Like,
I think in that instance, it was just all hands on deck. I mean, as you just pointed out, Grezzo went from we know what they've been working on because they were like they had Ocarina of Time 3D to Triforce Heroes to they then obviously went to Majora's Mask 3D. And as soon as that wrapped up, we now know that they went to work on what would become Link's Awakening.
Was Majora's Mask after Triforce Heroes?
Yeah, Triforce Heroes was 2015, 14. Maybe I got backwards. Sorry, but those two as well. Yeah. They were like working on both those kind of like almost concurrently, it seems like.
Yeah.
And then after those wrapped up, they switched work to Link's Awakening. And it seemed pretty clear that, like, honestly, since we know the performance issues aren't because of the visuals, it's because of inefficient coding.
Yeah.
It's probably because they had to port it to Switch and they couldn't do it very well, and they didn't make it ground up for Switch. That would make a lot more sense. Anyway, they're working on that, but like Simmons, for the Breath of the Wild 2 sequel, I think it's just all hands on deck. Because we've talked about Monolith Soft, they like are committing a lot of resources to this one. We know how much they committed to the first one. They're like all in on this one. The fact that they had to like ramp up hiring, even though they were ramping up hiring, they had to do it even more so than what they had planned.
Why is it so ramped up if it's going to be using assets from the original game? Or do you think that's...
I think there's a little bit of misdirection. I mean, even if it does reuse assets, I think they're going to completely change. I think it's going to be completely different. It might... it takes place in Hyrule, I think they just give you a completely different overworld where something's happened. It's been changed. Or they're making equally as big underworld component, which is like, holy shit, we're going to have two worlds that big as Breath of the Wild's first overworld? It's like, whoa. I think they're just going for super ambitious.
Yeah. So you think there's... I guess what you're saying, it sounds like you think there's going to be more... it's more ambitious than what we've seen. The trailer was neat enough, but what the teaser was at E3 and what was said at E3 about it kind of like made me feel like, oh, they're kind of doing a Majora's Mask thing where they're kind of like...
Thought that maybe too.
Yeah, I'm like, so it sounds like they're kind of just like quickly asset flipping Breath of the Wild to get like a sequel out, but...
And also you combine the fact that this game's concept was born of DLC that got too ambitious for the original game.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, they said that this was originally... They had more DLC planned, but they felt it was just getting too ambitious and that they should maybe... This might serve better as a sequel. But I think that's more story premise than anything, and maybe a gameplay hook.
It is weird that they're doing... But it's weird, but also not weird. It's weird for Nintendo, let me put it this way. It's weird for Nintendo that they're going to do a direct story sequel to a Zelda game, which they've done before, but usually, like, okay, like they did Link to the Past to Link's Awakening, which is a direct sequel. Zelda 2, I guess it's not that uncommon. You have Zelda 2 to Zelda 1, Ocarina of Majora, Wind Waker to Phantom Hourglass.
It just Spirit Tracks.
Well, that was like a generational leap.
But
I mean, like it's
continuity, like they directly.
It is direct continuity. Yeah. So it's not the continuity. I'm just kind of surprised. Like, hey, same Link and Zelda, like right after the last.
Probably
game.
The same thing when you get like a popular shonen character who wasn't originally planned to have a long arc, and like you see the audience so well reception, there's such a big reception to them. People love this new Link and Zelda so much. They're like,
they really do. Which
they're like, we might need to stick with let's stick with these for a while.
I'll be honest with you, I'm a little shocked at. I'm like, I get it. It's by far the best selling Zelda, so I get why there's so many people who are really attached to this Link and Zelda. But I'm also kind of shocked at the same time where I'm like, they're not this... Well, Link's Link. But I'm like, this Zelda's okay. She's not anything, like, mind-blowing as far as characterizations go. Like, you get more out of her from, like, the King's Diary than anything in the castle. But, like, she's just kind of like a pouty, whiny, bitch who kind of, like... realizes that she doesn't have as much shit under control as she thinks she does, and then like shit goes real bad real fast, and then goes and puts herself in a fucking blood egg for 100 years. So it's like, I mean, it's not like I like Tetra's like kind of the gold standard when it comes to like really cool Zeldas, or really like, okay, this is a character, and this character's going to have things go through the game and experience things and do things. And, like, this one's a bunch of weird flashbacks to, Ren Fair accent Zelda, getting pouty at Link, and then being, generally upset, fighting with her dad, and then, being sad when Link gets his ass kicked, and
guess-
that's kind of it. Like she's this thing in the background, like Zelda 1, because so much of that game does feel like Zelda 1 reduxed. Maybe Breath of the Wild 2, I feel like has the opportunity to make Zelda a character more. Because before she just seemed like, I'm very uptight and worried about, defeating Ganon, and then I went to go stop him and I got sealed away, and that's kind of every Zelda. Like,
I mean,
nothing's really news happening here.
That's there, but I mean, I don't know if I fully agree with that. I mean, I can counter that by saying, as cool as everyone loves Tetra, like the outward presentation of Tetra,
she gets fridged halfway through that game hard.
Like that's the thing. She ultimately gets same thing happens to her, especially in the sequel in Phantom Hourglass. She straight up just becomes a damsel in distress again.
I think she becomes
so
a
like,
statue in
they
distress.
they didn't really do anything to develop. Basically, Tetra doesn't get a lot of good character development. Honestly, when she finds out she's Zelda, she kind of just like freaks out, and then her as a character at the end, she just goes back to being Tetra. It's like she doesn't really embrace change or anything like that. She just says, "I just want to be what I be." And that's not a bad message. I'm saying in terms of character arc, it doesn't feel like Tetra had a great character arc in the Wind Waker. She has good characterization in terms of how she looks. Her dialogue's pretty good.
Yeah.
She's not in the background. She's in the foreground fighting with Link, doing it like she's more active. So that was a very positive message. That in Breath of the Wild, I would say I know not all of it is presented from Zelda's point of view. But you get this person who's this princess who's been told, you need to do this. You're supposed to have these powers. You're supposed to do this. This is your role.
Yeah.
Your father is like telling you all this stuff. And like you've been beaten into your head that you have to be this way. And she's basically rebelling against it. Like she's like having a lot of self-doubt. She's basically trying to figure out her place because she's supposed to be this role. It isn't working. She's like destroying herself mentally to try and like, why can't I summon these powers? Why am I not having these revelations? Why am I not this? And she's struggling. And you see that there's that scene where she finally breaks down to like Link. She's like, I can't deal with this anymore. Like she is like, you actually see, I see her as the most human of any Zelda characterization.
Well,
because
I felt like the diaries were the best part of that, like hers and the King's in Hyrule Castle.
That stinks that wasn't presented. Like that's one of the shortcomings of Breath of the Wild is that a lot of the story is held in A, the past, and B, through either flashback cutscenes or through diaries or dialogue stuff. I'd like to see that change. I
think the acting being just okay doesn't help it either.
Oh, the voice acting?
That's kind of another thing I'm getting.
That's why I switched to Japanese.
That's right. I forgot you could do that. But the Ren Fair accents of Zelda and mostly Zelda and a little bit of the King were just kind of like, I get what's going on here, but this is kind of just coming across as melodramatic. And the thing that kind of really, grinds my gears personally, I'm just like, they're really anxious and upset over like not being able to she's not being able to hear the voices or whatever the fuck. She's not being able to become her Goku power level 3 or whatever at the shrines because she goes to all the shrines and stuff. And all this is because this mythical fart cloud's gonna come back and fuck everything up. And I'm like, what's the context of that? Nothing.
Yeah, I mean,
which to me is like, God damn it! Like
we'll probably get more of that filled in with the sequel.
That's
hopefully, because they probably realized that was a big shortcoming. Is that didn't give a lot of motivation for this.
Does seem like what they were teasing. It really does.
I hope it is. And I hope they have a cool story for it.
I'm a little hopeful. Actually, one of the weird things is that one of the script writers at Monolith Soft was retweeting stuff for the Zelda project and stuff. So there's actually a chance that some of the writing staff of Monolith Soft might be involved with Breath of the Wild 2, which is really the only possible thing I can think of that would give me hope for the story because, long-time people know this, I have very little faith in the current Zelda team's ability to tell a compelling story. Ever since Koizumi left the series as co-director on Wind Waker, there has not really been good storytelling in Zelda. There's been more storytelling, but there's not been good storytelling. Like they I feel like they gave a valiant effort with Twilight Princess, but ultimately it's a one-off. And so it's still pretty good, but it's very standalone one-offy. But like everything they've done has been okay. I argue Skyward Sword's story is absolute garbage, but Breath of the Wild is perfectly suitable for the kind of game it is, post-apocalyptic Zelda. Link Between Worlds was okay. I was like, okay, here's an alternate history where they destroyed the Triforce, and and I'm like, it was okay.
The like, without spoiling it, the depiction of Link, alternate Link, is pretty good.
Yeah, it's
like when you find like it's not like
it's
it was
okay.
Yeah, it was a nice take. Like,
but it's not. Here's the thing, and I love seeing this because Link's Awakening remake just came out. There are people who are beating the game now and going like, man, I feel so bad at the end of the game, and I'm like, yes. You're supposed to.
Yeah.
You don't, because that's the thing is, Link's Awakening, Majora's Mask, kind of Wind Waker, I'd argue a little bit. They're bittersweet endings.
Yeah.
They're not.
Oh yeah, Wind Waker's definitely a bittersweet.
Yeah, like Wind Waker, Majora, like you're a little hopeful, but like they're kind of bitter. Like Link's Awakening is just kind of like fucking depressing when you really take the scope of the ending in. But they conjure up emotions that you don't expect and don't get otherwise in other Zelda games. Like even Twilight Princess, it's kind of bittersweet when Midna severs the link, but it's also kind of like, okay, that was a little bittersweet, but we still save the day. Everything's going back to the way it should be. But yeah, like that's what I kind of missed, is that for a while there was a sense of bittersweetness in Zelda games, kind of starting with like Koizumi started actually working proper on the series. I mean, like went full depression in Link's Awakening, but like Ocarina was a little bittersweet because Zelda had to send you back, so you were kind of like leaving that future history you made.
Yeah, like do you remember the comic book? The manga version ending of A Link to the Past, the Nintendo Power version.
I read it, but I don't remember.
So the very final shot is back at the Master Sword after. So the last scene in the game is Master Sword sleeps forever. Then it goes to the credit roll.
Yeah.
In the manga, it goes back to that shot, and Link is now like a knight in the Service of Hyrule, and he's like kneeling for it. He's like going there, and then Zelda, like in her like white cloak and her horse, rides up, and they have this like brief exchange where she's basically like, I feel sadness now, basically, like when we were like in this venture together, we were so deeply linked together, like this bond. And now it's faded. It's like it's almost like vanished completely. Yeah. But she goes, I will always cherish that time in my heart. And she rides off, like saying goodbye to Link. And like Link just kind of like looks off at like, sentimentally at her staring off. It's just like, yeah, like they were like shared this like intense adventure together, and now like they're going back to their roles. Like he's just a knight, she's like the leader of the. I was like, that's pretty bitter. I was like, if you're talking about bittersweet, that's like, that was really great ending. I was like, I sometimes like the secondary supplementary materials kind of paint my picture a little bit more of like what happens in some of the older games. And like,
there's the manga for Link's Awakening, which really dives deep into the the effect of what goes on in that game. And actually, they have a really cool non-game area where like Link tries to leave the island like on his own with Marin in a boat. So there's actually a lot, like there's some really good stuff there, but like same with Ocarina, I felt like it was there was like a tinge of sadness at the end there because you had to leave a future behind. There was Majora's Mask, of course, which has tons of stuff where it's like Link has to, he travels off. There's like the poor Deku scrub butler, and his son is, dead.
Well, it's like, you made everyone happy at the end of the game, and the Happy Mask Salesman's telling you like, I know you have to leave now, but like, look how much of a positive impact. But at the same time, the whole mission, your whole journey started because you're trying to find Navi, and it's like you did in the end, you don't get back to her, or it doesn't show you it happening. It just shows the like Skull Kid coming back and drawing a doodle.
There's a very weird, and I feel like there's a Koizumi-ism there, where while the main thing was you were looking for a lost friend, you ended up encountering and befriending and doing all these other things with these other people. Like you ended up like wanting one simple thing, and that led to this whole responsibility of saving the world elsewhere. Which is also kind of echoed a little bit in Ocarina. It's echoed in Link's Awakening a lot, where it's like your main quest line, you just want to leave this fucking island, but you end up being involved with all these other people, and then you have to say goodbye to them kind of thing, or you don't even get the chance. And it follows into Mario Galaxy, because if you really think about Rosalina's backstory and how it's like her whole thing is basically she's dealing with the loss of her parents, and then she through this, while she just really wanted, to be back with her parents who were gone, she ended up being involved in taking responsibility for being the mother of these Lumas. There's a lot of symbolic links between Koizumi's direct works that I feel, which are really good, and they're not in the Zelda series anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I trust them to show up in Breath of the Wild 2. God, would I love to be wrong about this. There's a lot of fan art of hydrated Ganondorf for Breath of the Wild 2, and part of me is kind of like, everyone's like, oh, do you think maybe Ganon was like this guy who he sacrificed himself?
I like that theory.
And I'm like, I like that theory, but I don't think they're gonna go for it. I feel like they're gonna be just like, no, there was this. Let me tell you how it's probably gonna go down in my head. Ganondorf was this tyrannical warlord, and to stop him, they had to use this ancient Sheikah technology / magic to seal him away in the underground. And like they had to make sure that this stayed this Sheikah technology hand stayed stuck on Ganondorf, because for some reason Fujibayashi is horny as hell for Sheikah technology. He daunts all his games with it. Like, he is so enamored with the Sheikah tribe in the Zelda series. He is like all of his games always give them way more. He's like Cartman in the Good Times with Weapons episode, where it's like any cool idea he has, he gives to the Sheikah. Oh, the Sheikah were these masters of technology, and they're like, but you said they're but Fujibayashi, you said they're the masters of magic. Well, they're also the masters of magic and technology. They have the superpower of they can do whatever the hell they need to do because they're so awesome. It's like, that's how he treats that, and I'm like, and that also bugs me personally a little bit, because if you remember Ocarina of Time, there's a weird text in the Shadow Temple that talks about like how the Sheikah the bloody history of Hyrule was buried there. Like, they were basically sort of quote unquote assassins, or they did all the dirty. This is
my disappointment.
This is all that they were supposed to be the people who did all the dirty work for Hyrule,
that's never
and they
been
kind of ignored
explored,
that. And then they went. They were the coolest, most awesome, amazing, technologically advanced, and magical, super-powered beings ever. And it's like, come on.
It's like, at least in Breath of the Wild, we got in my opinion, a pretty good exploration of the Gerudo culture, and finally get to see it fully fleshed out and actually getting to experience it is one of the biggest things I wanted to see in a Zelda game.
There's a fun thing,
and I loved it.
I don't know. Did you do the thing? Did you take all the Gerudo couples classes?
I think so.
Because there's like 4 of them or so.
In that little side room by where the warriors practice.
I don't know if it's by accident or if it was by design, where like there was always the one girl who kept saying the wrong answer.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, that's all. I don't know if that's a callback to Ocarina of Time, which is how Gerudo women treated men during the Ocarina of Time era, or if they just thought it was a funny gag. I don't know if it was accidentally but I thought that was an interesting, because like in Breath of the Wild's timeline, the Gerudo are no longer this sort of antagonistic. They just live in the desert. They're allies of Hyrule. They work with Hyrule now. Yeah. So I actually enjoyed seeing that, because they hinted at a little bit in Four Swords Adventure. But like it was nice to see it, because I was at the assumption at this point, like, they just forgot about that like the Gerudo entirely, and I almost wondered if it was like they were afraid of, maybe that doesn't look good on like a sensitivity angle in this day and age. So now they're allies. But
I thought it was honestly, I just always took it as Ocarina of Time. I mean, A, product of its time, but B, they were just brought under like a warlord culture when Ganondorf took over. He just made them like aggressive, assassin-like thieves instead of because they said they used to be thieves with honor. It's like more playful, Indiana Jones style grave robber type.
Fascinated by the Unification War, which was hinted in Ocarina, and then like, because Ganondorf is raised by Kumi and Kotaki, they're kind of like the Darth Sidious of the background. They're kind of the ones who raise Ganondorf, and there's interesting ideas there where it's like, maybe Ganondorf is a product of his upbringing, not so much anything innate to and I think that's a really interesting story to have there, and I don't know that we're gonna get it.
Yeah, you probably aren't gonna get something like that, honestly.
But it is one thing they could seriously add to Breath of the Wild 2 that would be interesting, and it's something that Breath of the Wild 1 doesn't have, because Breath of the Wild 1 does not have an interesting story at all.
The thing is that I want to see with Breath of the Wild sequel is that a lot of, as we said earlier, Breath of the Wild story is mostly told in the past, and then catching up with that past. That past catching up with you, and it's the whole whodunit thing. Like I gotta fill in the blanks because I don't because it's you forgot everything. It's like I got him there.
I wonder if there's a fear there, maybe from stuff Anuma said, where he's afraid, like he didn't know how to tell a progressive linear story in an open world.
Oh, absolutely. They basically made the right call. Honestly, I understand. I totally empathize with the frustration over having a stronger like forward narrative.
Yeah,
because I enjoy that, but at the same time, they needed to nail the important stuff, which is making a good open world Zelda,
which they did.
Now that they had that under their belts,
yeah.
My expectation is now you can try and tackle this other stuff. Now you can try and tackle dungeons. Now you can try and have a story that is told progressively through the game instead of through flashbacks because you don't know where the player's going to be and stuff. Now you can figure out where these crucial points are going to be along your quest line.
I have a theory that I think they're going to do a thing where they will lock story segments and progression of the story and progression of areas to floating islands. Like, because you see the thing, like the castle rise up, where I think, like, okay, they're going to make it so you kind of have to get to this one spot. Kind of like how Xenoblade 2 had the different titans.
Yeah.
And you could run around all the titans to your leisure, but you couldn't go to another titan until you got to a certain point in the story. And they'll treat the floating islands kind of like that in a sense, where it's like, you can't get to this area of this floating island area until we deem it necessary story-wise. And that's how they'll sort of gatekeep it off. That's my theory.
I'm kind of like, honestly, that could be a solution. I could definitely see some kind of style of that working.
Or the reverse, where it's an underground thing, where there's sections of the underworld you can only access after certain story segments.
I would also like to see them maybe try to retain a semblance of you only get as much story as you want to put into like your path you take.
I think that'd be great. I think I would actually be all in favor of more diaries or more like more texts, more like just you look. There's lore, but you got to go seek it out, and if you seek it out, you'll be rewarded with it. But we're not gonna shove it down your throat.
Not just, I mean, not just in like secondary materials like books and stuff. I'm saying like they should still retain the nature of you can still, if you want to, you can run to the final boss and try and fight him again. One, but at the same time, let's say they add dungeons. I'll give you my example. If they put traditional dungeons in there, and they add like more towns or something, like things bit up. If you don't travel to those towns and you don't travel those dungeons, you miss entire characters. You miss entire plot points that help the world building and the main plot. Like if you go to X dungeon and then you find out this village, you might meet a new character and you find out a new story about them. You might find out more about Hyrule's history that way through cutscenes and text. And like that boss might be like all the ideas you said about like, remember you talking about like the reimagined version of the genie boss in Link's Awakening. Like if he was like part of a
so I had all these
like stuff
crazy
like that.
theories and stories how they could have expanded Link's Awakening's backstory, but
apply that to Breath of the Wild too, where if you don't ever go to these areas of the world, I might play through it, you might play through it, and a third person might play through it and be like, hey, did you do this part over here? And like, wait, what?
What was that? You could argue they did that already with Breath of the Wild 1, but it was a very minor thing. Because like, if you just ran to the end and killed Ganon, you would never have met like Rivali or Thirsty Zora Girl or Waifu or Barbosa.
Are they not in the ending?
I don't think so.
I thought they were.
Because they had that whole thing where they're like, yes, because they only do that if you actually are.
Well, that's the attack with the divine beast, but in the ending, I thought their spirits were there in the ending, like the actual ending.
I'm not 100%
above
sure
like Hyrule Castle, like. I mean,
I'm not 100% sure.
But you're right. You're right that you
it's still
you don't
find
out about all the flashback stuff if you don't do all.
But here's the thing: none of their shit's important.
Well, I want
to the overall story is like they're the champions meant to help the hero, and they went to go control these divine beasts and died, and that was kind of it. And I'm like, okay, like what's their importance to the story? Not a whole hell of a lot. Like there's no great revelation by freeing their spirits that you learn about Hyrule, its history, even really them. It's just like there was a Zora that wanted to boink Link. There was Falco who wanted to be, who thought he was the greatest shooter ever. There was Urbosa who was kind of like a surrogate mother to Zelda. That's kind of could have been something, but nothing really went from it. And then what was the fourth? Oh God, the Goron kid. Who cares about him?
I mean, the kid or the actual hero?
The kid. The kid was like, who cares? And like the hero was. Yeah, and the hero was like, he's Daruk, he's a Goron, he smashes things. Like,
Yeah, I
like
love
his story was so
I love
goddamn
those
insignificant to the overall plot.
I still like those characters. The problem was you played with their ancestors essentially, and to me, except for maybe Sidon, none of them were as interesting as their counterparts, their ancestors. I wanted to like play alongside Rivali and Daruk and especially Urbosa. I was like, dude, when am I gonna fight with her? Like, doesn't happen.
Well, it's like, is it her daughter or granddaughter or something? It was really weird. I was kind of a little like off put, but they're like, hey, here's the Gerudo Queen, and it's this little girl, and I'm like, why? Like it felt like a very anime fan centric design because and the thing is, I was super happy with how the rest of the Gerudo were like really tall, really muscular. They were like they were beef sticks. Here's one thing, and I've said this before. I don't know how you feel. I was super annoyed with one design facet of the Gerudo in Breath of the Wild, and that was the fucking heels. Why are they wearing heels?
Oh, they're all wearing heels? I even noticed that.
Some are, like, a lot of them are. And I'm like, why are they wearing heels? They're in the desert. They would not wear heels.
So here's the
they're
thing.
They're supposed to be wearing sandals. In Ocarina of Time, they wore sandals because they're in the desert. God damn it.
Okay, so
bothered the shit out of me.
Practicality, yes. That's in modern context, yes. Like heels definitely have a connotation with controlling women's image and stuff and like sexualization.
Yeah.
But historically, I believe I was reading up on this. I believe heels were originally worn by men. And it was like
to me, it's
like in ancient times. So I wonder if this was trying to be like a more like like it was trying to be like something about like ancient warriors or something. I could be completely off.
Not even close.
Then never mind. And it was just a sexualization thing.
I doubt
it
very much so.
Yeah, that was a
because they
stupid
were
thing.
wearing sandals in Ocarina and Majora's Mask.
I don't remember any heels.
And it has nothing to do
games.
with anything about like male female. To me, it was just like they're in the desert. Why are they wearing sandals? I mean, I'm sorry. Why are they wearing heels? They're in the desert.
That choice makes no sense.
They should be wearing sandals.
Never mind.
Like that was the one thing that bothered me about the Gerudo in that game. And then, they I don't know, like to make a sympathetic Gerudo character, they made her like super young and like Link's age or younger, actually younger than Link. And I'm like, I guess, because that was like the one thing where. Other than Daruk, because he's a Goron, and I guess they've naturally established with Darunia that like Gorons are usually older. It's like everyone had to be like a young hero. You know what I mean? Like the young Goron son, Sidon, his sister, Rivali. Who the hell?
Well,
who was alive in with the?
I forget Rivali's the descendant's name, the white feathered one that helps you fly into the divine beast.
Right, he was super memorable.
They seemed older because he had kids and stuff.
Oh, was the bird older?
I thought so. I thought he
might
had
have
kids.
been because I don't remember anything about him.
And sorry, it's been a while. I'm blanking. I used to know all their names. And Sidon, I know he's a prince, but he seemed
he's got like the Dan smile with the shiny teeth.
He seemed like old enough. I didn't feel like he was a teenager like age.
I was kind of. I mean, I'm just saying. Like, I actually would have liked it if they were a little bit more spread out. Like the original champions were like Urbosa's an older woman, Daruk's like obviously an older guy. But Mipha and Falco are they're young heroes. Like I don't know. It would have been interesting because there was one thing with Twilight Princess where it was like they were totally underutilized, but the Hyrule Liberation Force was kind of this weird hodgepodge of characters. You know?
Yeah.
Like you had like the knight, this old sage, a techno head. You know, your older middle-aged guy who from your swordsman from your village, and you like it was kind of I like the motley crew aspect of it. There's a little bit too much like, young hipness going on with the new champions, but that's super nitpicky. I don't think it doesn't really matter. But like,
I don't think I had that complaint honestly.
it's not even really a complaint. It's more so. It's not even a complaint. It's something I'm just realizing now, where it's just kind of like, yeah, they were all kind of just sort of just young, kind of like go-getters.
They just spent so much time with the ancestor champions.
Yeah,
and a lot of the main critical story flashback points focus on them so much, and even the DLC stuff. And I just wanted to spend more time with them in the present, and that was what bumped me. I get, they died, so now you're
died.
Like, and that's a trope. That's a trope in Zelda.
They just stay in that divine beast and don't do anything till the very end.
It was there was a lot of opportunity there, and I felt like that was in terms of the narrative, that was his biggest weakness is the payoff of everything. Yeah. Is that they had these great, to me, I had these really engaging side characters. And I wanted to spend more time with them. I wanted them to pay off and come. I mean, yeah, they do shoot the laser and help you there, but they're I want to see in the sequel. I want to see you meet characters who are play more prominent roles alongside you, where they're in the story more. Like Midna. Like I want so on a level. Midna.
Here's the thing. I feel Ocarina did the Guardians thing kind of better, in a sense, because
the sages,
yeah, because like they were a major part of your childhood. Then you show up as an adult. There's like this sadness. There's like this theory that they're dead.
Yeah,
like they don't really ever address it.
I don't think that's true, but
but like they kind of address the thing where it's like, oh, they get stuck being a sage. Like you lose your childhood friend Saria, so she can become a sage, and Darunia, and then like Naburu and Impa.
I think they died. I think
Rudo was really funny and interesting in a way. Like for a game from '98, it seemed like there was actually more dialogue and more stuff going on with the sages in particular than there was necessarily with the champions in Breath of the Wild. They were kind of just there to be like, there was a flashback, they died, you save them, cool, go kill again. And then that's the other one thing that I think they can really nail is, again, narratively speaking, the ending in Breath of the Wild, I think even for the people who love the game would probably admit it's kind of a super weak ending.
I mean, yeah.
Like it's just, you do the victory lap, you kill Ganon, and then like Zelda's like, do you remember me? The end. Okay.
I guess, yeah.
There's a one thing on the hill after the credits, but I'm like, okay.
Yeah, to put it in better words, because I think I'm just being around the bush, the biggest disappointment with the story of Breath of the Wild is just who's the villain. Their story, like they just have no story.
Yeah.
They're just there. It's just this threat, and it's bad because it's bad, and I hate that in the Zelda series.
Yeah.
I love it when the villains have a story, have development, are a little bit more morally ambiguous. Like the Thanos thing, where it's like, I'm actually trying to do something because I believe I'm right. I'm not just evil, even though like what I'm doing is kind of like genocidal maniac stuff.
That's what I'm always saying too with Ganondorf, because I feel like there's a really interesting story to tell with him that they just refuse to tell for some reason. Where it's kind of like you could argue that he comes from a sort of like Wind Waker, they tease it where it's like he comes from a shitty oppressed life, and maybe Hyrule might share some responsibility for why Ganondorf had such a shitty life, because he was forced to live in a wasteland and was not welcome in Hyrule. And I'm like, this could be an interesting reason for him being a shithead.
Hell yeah. Like it didn't even have to be like so black and white. It could have just been like in wars or just like there's like innocent bystanders, there people get caught up. Like the Fire Emblem Path of Radiance Radiant Dawn cover this very amazingly. The first game's from Ike and the Grail Mercenaries perspective, and then you switch over to Soth and what's her face's name, the two main characters who are from the country you just went to war. Like, you were the good guys in the first game. We've been attacked. We've got to fight back. Hey, we beat their country. Yay. Yeah. Second game picks up after the aftermath. Wow, these kids who are now orphans hate you because they view you as like, that could have been like the Gerudo, like during the Unification War. I mean, there's so many opportunities here, by the way. This is what we're getting at. But like through the Unification War, they could have been like, oh, it was necessary to do this and this because otherwise they're going to fall apart. And unfortunately, the Gerudo got the short end of the stick. And hey, like we didn't mean to do that, but that's what happened. And now they feel this resentment towards Hyrule.
It would have been because they have that thing where like Zelda's really upset because she can't, do her duty or hear the voices or whatever in the shrines, and the king gets mad at her for that. And he's like, I pushed her too hard. How much more interesting would it have been if Zelda goes and like, Dad, what did you do in that war? Like, you murdered all these people, or like, we did what to them? And he's like, it was war. I had to do what was necessary. And she's like, that was necessary? Like, that would have been a way more interesting conflict between Zelda and the King of Hyrule if she found out that he had to make some real kind of like really questionable judgment call to win the war, and then like that, to me, that would have been really interesting. And then like now, hey, so why is this threat attacking Hyrule? Well, kind of goes back to how, your fathers and forefathers kind of fucked up and like did not set the stage for a good future. All they really did was breed resentment kind of. That's to me the Zelda story I want. And I think if it's true, I don't know if it's true or not, but I mean, if say some of the people from Monolith Soft are getting in on the writing development after Torna, I kind of feel I would be very excited because I feel Torna actually handled that pretty well. I don't know if you've played Torna yet.
That's the only thing I haven't played Torna. I just finished the main game.
They're pretty good because like if you get the full experience if you play the main game, because they don't repeat tragic events that you see in Xenoblade 2 and Torna. They just lead up to it and then what happens next. But you take all of it into account, and I've said this before. I think it's only T rated, but it is the darkest thing Nintendo has ever published story wise.
Torna is?
Yeah, like absolutely the darkest thing they've ever done in regards to like just the heaviness of what's happening, and it's actually handled fairly well. Because it's obviously it's a prequel, it's not gonna have a happy ending, but like man, they go to some places, not graphically but just subjectively, they go to places that like, wow, that was really fucking dark. And part of me is just kind of like, God, I wish I had that in Zelda. And maybe Zelda doesn't need it. At the end of the day, maybe Zelda doesn't need it. Maybe nobody wants it. I want it.
Yeah, that's the thing to consider is that
like,
there is as the series gets older. I mean, there's always been a diverse group of fans, and there have been fans who have been invested in lore of the Zelda series. Obviously, trying to figure out like what the timeline was, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then there are people who just like, oh, I just love this individual story. I just love this game. I just love doing this. Yeah. There's so many different reasons to love it. And honestly, at the end of the day, some of the stuff we're asking for, we'd love to see happen.
Yeah, and I think
it might not be like the best for everyone, and also it might not only ultimately mean why it's such a great game or great series. It's not. Yeah, this is how some of us see it.
I think universally too. Besides that, like moving into I think everyone I've ever talked to has said they want real dungeons back. Like I think.
Oh yeah.
I think everyone wants to see real, atmospheric, based dungeons return to the Zelda series. Like
oh, for sure.
Like some people really like the shrines. I don't think the shrines were bad, but I think they wore out their welcome hard.
They were obviously like, from a design perspective, they were a necessity. They need to have so many scattered across the land to help give you another incentive. Like, go explore over here. It's a huge world. Why do I want to go over here? It's just another hill. Oh, there's some mini puzzle here. Oh, it opens a shrine. Cool.
Yeah.
And I also think they were trying to figure out, like, because it's physics-based puzzles now.
Yeah.
They went in a different direction with how to do this stuff. And I think by trying out so many different ideas, it allowed them the freedom to be a little bit more creative.
Yeah.
But at the same time, now they've like had all this experience again under their belt. They could like kind of like stitch it together and make like a more proper dungeon. The Divine Beast were literally what I just said. Honestly, they were just like taking like 5 of the shrine concepts and throwing them into like connected rooms. But that was the problem. The Divine Beast from the interior didn't look like anything unique.
They were just brown versions of blue shrines.
They were they just lacked the atmosphere. They lacked that kind of like
theming.
Presence there. And I think another thing that it'll be a huge design decision if they go this way is upping the item count. Having more variety to how to tackle stuff in a dungeon. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of way to solve shrine puzzles, but I think everything came down to, can I bomb this? Can I shoot this? Can I freeze this? Can I glide over this? And it was just
that was the problem, because you got every item every item was given that you had by 3 hours into Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Once you got off the Great Plateau, you never got another item that did anything like extra. You got the glider, you got bombs, you got time freeze, you got water freeze, and you got whatever magnet. There's no hook shot. There's no Pegasus boots or hover boots or anything of that nature. You get the Zora armor, which lets you go up waterfalls.
You get like that. You get.
But it's very.
That's very situational.
Very situational.
The most practical thing you get beyond that is Rivali's Gale.
Yeah.
Which lets you shoot up, which feels like it should be like a special ability that you get from an item. And it's
like Rivali's Gale is probably...
Yeah, it's practical. You use it all over the place. It's like, whoa, this is pretty cool.
However, as good as it is and useful as it is, it's not necessarily needed.
Yeah, because you can still traverse up by climbing. It doesn't give you access. It makes things faster, but it doesn't necessarily give you access to things you couldn't naturally get to.
It's not quite like how Rock's Feather, you absolutely needed Rock's Feather to get anywhere in Link's Awakening.
Talked about this recently, Simmons. Not me, you knew, but someone else I was talking about. I think it was maybe Michael Huber of EasyAllies, because he loves the Batman, the Rocksteady Batman games.
Yeah.
And the Montreal Studios one as well. I was talking about how those games, like the gliding, and by far there's gliding, but in Batman you have the grappling hook to shoot, grapple, and launch yourself up. What if they add the hook shot into this new one?
Exactly.
And now you can like hook cliff edges, and then you like shoot up at an angle, and now you got like momentum, and you can fly. I was like, there are so many cool possibilities they can work in with this. Like, I'm not asking for like the 20 new items or something. Like maybe like 3 or 4 new items, and like the hookshot feels like it has to be one because it feels like it became such a staple after its introduction in A Link to the Past.
And it's so weird that it wasn't in Breath of the Wild, or nothing like it was in Breath of the Wild. Like it
felt
for a game that's all
perfect.
about physics and traversal and floating around, it was super bizarre how it wasn't there. And there wasn't anything like necessarily like the Pegasus boots either. You could get a horse, and eventually you can get a motorcycle.
Yeah, I don't know if the Pegasus boots / shoes are a necessity anymore in this type of game.
Well, here's the thing. I think when you look at a game like Spider-Man and you think of, again, hookshot web and other things like that, or Saints Row, like something like Pegasus boots that let you boost or like do like just like a burst of energy. Like you could like grapple and then burst off and then like grapple to a ledge.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Burst off the ledge like a big leap and then pull out the paraglider.
Instead of an item, I think what the game with Breath of the Wild 2 could really benefit from that was pretty much absent: magic. Bringing back magical abilities. Yeah. Having a magic meter so that
you could argue the Sheikah Slate was magic and kind of was, but again, it was limited to 2 things.
But like this could be one of the spells, like a blink or flash step type spell where like you have a momentary burst of speed. Or you can use it like on anything to increase your momentum. Fire spells again, like ice spells, like wind spell, or like something more creative. Like creating the block that explodes, like the
like a growing spell, or like a corrupting spell, even where like you can make vines wither, vines grow to create climbing platform. Well, you can climb everything in Breath of the Wild, so it doesn't matter. But
I mean, yeah, like there's so many cool things.
I'd kind of be down with if they got rid of stamina. Grip meters, I think, makes sense, but
I think stamina just needs to be applied to climbing.
Yeah, but running is getting it's real tedious and old at this point.
I think the only time stamina meter should be applied is if you're in active combat. Then it's
fuck with that. Fuck off with that.
For running, because then they'd be like, oh, it makes it harder to run away.
Okay.
But like if you're not fighting anything, you're just like in neutral mode.
Okay,
you should be able to run as much as you want.
Sword is in shield, and
if you draw your sword,
you have a stamina.
Or like they just make alert status, or if you've been spotted by an enemy, I
could see that where. Okay, that's one thing that I don't think has been brought up enough, and I just want to bring it up real quick. The combat in Breath of the Wild is fucking terrible, and I'm not even talking about the breaking. I'm talking about the abilities you have in that game are sub-Ocarina of Time levels. You can't roll forward towards an enemy like you could in Ocarina. You can't even do that. You get a basic-ass bitch backflip and a side jump, and that's kind of it. You're meant to use that Fury Strike or Flurry Strike, whatever they call it.
Yeah, the time
but it's like
dodge,
your movement abilities in Breath of the Wild are like one tiny step below Ocarina, and it kind of sucks. Like, I really would like them to try to go back to Wind Waker and Twilight Princess especially.
Oh, I see.
And pull that in. And they're like, oh, but then you'd be able to beast enemies. Well, then maybe make your combat engaging. Like...
I mean, I always felt like a lot of the tougher enemies just encouraged me to like get in the air, use timed arrow shots for crits,
then
rinse and repeat.
That was it.
To beat the harder Lionels in especially in Master Mode. It's like just jump because like you regenerate health. It's like you gotta
you create air pocket, fly up and nuke them.
Yeah, and you gotta get those flurry strike timings. Like you gotta spam stuff in the slowdown mode, and otherwise. But like in practical combat, it felt like it was all basically you were playing more like defensive, or you're trying. There were some fun parts where you got creative with the environment. And you could use stuff like that, but at the same time,
there's a lot of times
it felt like everything was meant for you to get up close and personal, and then dodge to trigger the flurry strikes, or to sneak in and get like the sneaking kill strike, or glide in and do like aerial strike. It didn't. I mean, there's also horse combat as well. It was a different type of combat.
The thing is, like some people always say, like, "Oh, I want you to be creative." Like, there's a lot of spots on that map where there is nothing creatively at your disposal. Like, you can walk into certain bokoblin camps where there's just a shit ton of bokoblins. There's no metal crates around. There's no rocks. There's nothing to like magnet fling at them.
Like
you're on your own, buddy. Like either nuke them or run away because you don't have an option otherwise. So like I really don't agree with that assessment that like it wanted you to be creative. Like, it wanted you to be creative if it allowed you to be creative, because there are plenty of places where there's nothing. There's no water. There's no magnetized items. Like there are a lot of places on that map where it's just you against whatever group of lizard foals and bokoblins. So I'm like, here's the thing. No, you cannot tell me like that combat in that game was great. I can understand adequate. I can understand I didn't have a problem with it. That's fine. But at the same time, you can't tell me it's as good as something like Platinum games. Like you can't sit there
But
and
I
say
don't think
like
it's ever meant to be like that. Though
it should. It absolutely should. I think of how much better and more engaging would it be if you had either a really important parry mechanic or a better implementation of dodge mechanic. Because this one, it's like, oh, you dodged, mash button for automatic whacking. What if there was more of like a bullet time, witch time kind of mechanic or something to that effect? Like the combat would be way more engaging than what we got.
I don't know if you're arguing for like fast pace when you're talking about Platinum, because
I'm arguing for
more like the
more
dodging,
more
and
mechanical depth, more ability to move and do shit with just you, your sword, and your feet.
I mean, then why wouldn't you want something? I mean, I hate bringing this up because like it's the comparison that like needs to die, but for the sake of this argument, I think it's fine. But like, what's wrong with like? If Zelda, would you prefer Zelda having more like Sekiro's combat, which is like exceptional sword combat, where it's about parries, it's about like movement.
It would be cool. I don't think Zelda should be as.
I mean, that like, literally be it, but like in that direction, where like
it would be better?
Heavier focus on sword combat, where it is about like swinging at the right time to parry,
yeah,
or finding an opening.
Well, the thing is, that you could make and like. Just having better sword combat doesn't necessarily take away from the bow and arrow combat or using bombs or combinations of it, because you could still experiment around if you want to. Don't take that away. Just make basic sword combat way more engaging, way more interesting. Like wanting to go up and like have a Bokoblin run up you and you just parry his ass away and like you stun him and then like you know like way more than what we got in the game, because there's a shield. I think there is shield bash, but it doesn't do much.
Yeah,
like,
you break their stance and you get a
little
like, free
bit,
attack on them.
It's not as.
You can also knock back lasers. I mean,
the lasers is kind of cool, but it's like once you figure out that timing, it literally just becomes a sort of boring. Wait for that key moment of the flash, parry it back.
Like then you can get like into like closer combat situations with them where it's like a faster reaction.
I want more. Basically, I want more rolling mechanics, not fury strikes, but like. More emphasis on like dodging and rolling around enemies, doing cool shit to them, making combat engaging. Because
I think it's not engaging. A better sidestep type thing, like if someone's lunging at you, like instead of just flurry strike timing, like you have the option to like do like the link to the Wind Waker roll around, where it's
roll around, or even one where maybe he just sidesteps so the character just misses and you're still there, but now he's wide open. Shit like that. You can knock him down to his ass or something. Bring like death stabs back. Not if a character gets knocked down in Twilight Princess, you could stab him. Like bring shit like that back. Stuff like that. Like I don't know, like throw your shield at them. Especially if shields aren't going to be like
you can throw your sword at them.
Yeah, you can throw your sword at them. Like wouldn't it be cool if like, you could maybe throw your shield? And that's the other thing too. Like this is what bugged Max about it when he said, "I hate the fact that the enemies in Breath of the Wild don't play by the same rules as you do. Their weapons never break. They have no stamina. They never run out of ammo. If they are disarmed, they can still punch you. You can't do the same to them." And I thought it was a pretty good point where I'm like, yeah, the enemies don't abide by the same. Only Link has to abide by this arbitrary set of rules of, paper thin weapons, ammo counters, and no self-defense. Link did not master CQC at all, apparently. He is completely useless if he doesn't have a sword or weapon in his hand. So I'm like,
he didn't get through monk training.
Yeah, like nothing, like not even like a basic punch or a rock throw or nothing. Like I'm like, yeah, it would have been nice if
you
Link...
still have, if all your weapon fails, you still have your rune abilities though.
Right, so basically it becomes drop bomb, run away, ignite bomb, drop bomb, run away, ignite it. Kind of like that's kind of what it becomes until you find a stick or something.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, like most enemies felt way more opposing to Link. Like I didn't feel like melee combat would really serve much. I honestly, if I looked at any enemy next to Link, I'd think he should lose in hand-to-hand combat to most of them. I mean,
you want Link to be like totally outgunned here.
But at the same time, like you get a horse, you just mow through everything at the same time.
Especially if you get like that Ganondorf horse.
Yeah,
you just run everything over.
Like, I mean, there are. I think it's just how much effort you want to put. There are certain situations where they purposely put little around you because they want a harder fight situation. Like thinking of like some of the Lionel fight situations. It's like it's a flat land and
the
there's
Lionel
nothing
fights
around.
are generally kind of one of the more fun fights in the game because they requires little more dexterity. Like they can do more stuff. They'll do charges. They'll shoot you with their own arrows, or they'll run up and swipe you. There's a little more going on. You can mount them, and there's a weird little glitch where like if you're smacking them while mounting them, it doesn't actually take away any
stamina or durability.
So like you can actually kill every Lionel with one stick in the game if you only do the smacking him on the ass.
And like I kind of like how the AI is for some of the enemies. I mean, there are times where it made me scream at the game, but at the same time, it's cool to see toss like an arrow past them. And they're like, huh? Like the Goblin look around, like, what was that? And they all scramble for it. It's like, now I get to sneak up on you.
But like, I just think like if you added a launcher, or for your Devil May Cry fans, if you added High Time and Stinger alone into the combat, maybe make them stamina based so you can't like spam them. But like, you could do like 2 or 3 stingers before you run out of stamina, because it'll do like half a circle or something. That would make combat more engaging. Launch this guy so you can deal with others. It would be honestly, more. That's what I want.
I would give you like the Twilight Princess skill moves that you can learn from.
At least, yeah. Like I
feel
like
they added like 4 or 5 special techniques that like you have to go out of your way to find, and like they advance combat.
And then that's the other thing. That would give you a reason to go exploring, because that's one of my big problems with Breath of the Wild is that I explored the world map because I enjoy exploring, but there was very little incentive after a certain point, after a certain number of shrines, hearts, and stamina that I've upgraded. There was very little reason for me to go around the world and do anything. Like the rewards were usually very minimal. Like I can think of a couple cool ones, like going into that forest that got all dark, going into the labyrinth mazes to get the berserker armor. But like, it would be cool if like they hid all these techniques, downward stab, I forget what it's called, but it's if you have your sword sheathed. And it's like a quick strike in Twilight Princess. Like right before an enemy's about to attack you with the sheathed weapon, you can death stab them real quick. More parry stuff, helm splitter, roll around. Going to find those moves. Finding like, again, maybe even bring him back. Bring the hero shade back. Like find him out there. And he teaches you these advanced combat. That's a good reason. I think one thing Breath of the Wild 2 could really improve is more incentive to go out there. Because like, you could find really cool weapons. Who cares? They're going to be gone in 3 enemies anyways. Like there was no incentive besides some armor sets, which there weren't enough of in Breath of the Wild. There wasn't enough incentive for me to go out and explore every nook and cranny of the world. I did anyways because I like doing that, but I wish there was more of a tangible reward for exploring.
Yeah, I mean, I like the armor sets, but in terms of weapons, I mean, there were a variety of weapons you could get, like spears, you could get like axes and stuff. They were
fucking useless after a few enemies, though.
I mean, I guess the thing is, they should maybe like scale it a little bit more so that like it's better uses against certain enemy types. Like the elemental stuff, I found to be the most useful because it would like
you'd always want like
lightning to stun everything.
Yeah, you always wanted a lightning one on you,
or ice to freeze because like
if a wizard was around, you'd always have one have like a fire rod, like
But it'd be kind of cool if there's like maybe they can make you less. They could go with a proficiency thing, maybe. Like you're worried about like stamina and all that stuff. What if like using a certain weapon more made you more proficient with it, and they had levels of that?
I think that
so you
would
build up stamina. Maybe like instead of like seeking out someone to learn a specific technique, you learn degrees of mastery. Like you become like a master of like the lance, essentially. Become a master of the axe.
Yeah,
like,
maybe.
Like I'm talking Fire Emblem here, basically. Like if they worked in some Fire Emblem.
I think that would be a better substitute for weapon durability, because then it would make you want to seek out fights more. It would make you want to seek out weapons more. Make you want to go looking for stuff. And, raiding the camps. Because I don't know how you were, but like there's a certain point in Breath of the Wild where I just stopped going anywhere near camps, not because I was afraid of them, because I didn't want to deal with it. And I knew that.
It'd be tedious. Yeah, you didn't want to.
It was like whatever
hero mode.
Whatever reward I get from that's not going to be worth it in the end. It'll be like some rupees and a couple weapons that'll break soon, anyways. So it's like I ended up starting avoiding enemies in the game just because I just didn't want to deal with them. To me, that to me is right there is where a combat system fails. That it becomes so much of a hassle to deal with an enemy that you just start actively avoiding them. So I that's what I really want for, say, Breath of the Wild 2 is I would like them to do something like a weapon proficiency, weapon mastery. Make it so like, I really want to fight a bunch of enemies. I really want to be good at lance. I want to get good at boomerang. I want to get good at two-handed swords. Like, let me find shit that I can fight. I came here to fight.
Yeah, my thing with that, like the direction I'd like them to take that, honestly, is I would if you put more time and effort into say proficiency, like if you become like a lance user, it would be really cool to see you have like maybe a few, Link becomes like a certain job essentially, like the traditional job roles of class play essentially. Whereas if you spend more time with a lance in Breath of the Wild 2, your playstyle becomes more like a Dragoon. You could do like long jumps.
I think
you could do like better tossing, whereas you go like strict sword and shield. I think it's basically like Monster Hunter World will be the most analogous thing.
A light class system, not a heavy class system.
Not too heavy,
but like a light class system would be another thing too, because then you could like divvy up the armor sets, where like you go on you tie that into the quest lines. And that was something Monosoft was hiring for, was a lot of quest line stuff. Was like, if it was like, hey, you want to learn to be a dragon, you said a dragoon, so you start following certain quest lines, which send you to certain areas of the world naturally that will get you armor sets that are more tailored towards lance type, dragoon style fighting. So like, you could be to be a full completionist and send Gerard into a personal hell. They make this thing where there's all these long pathways you can go to become a master swordsman, a master dual hander, a master boomerang, master lance or dragoon. Like not heavy, not nuts thing, but like it would be kind of something interesting if that's how they divvied up sort of the quest stuff, rather than just, because I did actually very little quests in Breath of the Wild. Because I didn't find most of them useful or worth it. Terrytown being the standout, which I thought was like the coolest quest line. And I'm like, more of that, please. Because like it was like affecting the world, and like you could literally see like stuff changing and progressing as you do it. And I'm like, yes, more Terrytown. There's a lot of stuff like, hey, I need razor shrooms. Give me 10 razor shrooms. I give you a diamond. Great.
Show the kid all the different weapons and stuff. And I'd love to see magic class. Like if you go with that class system, just like if Link can just become a magic wielder instead of using a sword.
So you get really proficient at those magic rods.
No, so you have a wand. Yeah, you have like a wand basically, and it's just you're casting spells and stuff. You're like ranged DPS essentially.
Yeah,
maybe kind of.
I actually would like to see that. Those are things I would actually really like to see. As far as the other elephant in the room, though, like last thought here, what do you think of, should Zelda be playable? Yes or no?
Yes, absolutely should be playable.
I see no reason not to.
And I think they should just give you the choice at the beginning of the game. You either play as Link or Zelda, and like maybe there's two paths through the game, or it's
depends
the same
on
path.
that really dives into how ambitious does the game want to be.
Or you just play this reverse the roles. Like whoever you pick, the other person becomes out of their role in the game. So it's still it's the same game no matter what. You just switch roles. Or if they if we talked about earlier, that multiplayer thing. Maybe there is some form of co-op that you could do because the two of them are present at all times. Yeah. Like that'd be freaking.
Well, there was like
intense.
A weird thing where they were like really trying to emphasize the sales of the Switch Lite, where there's a co-op mode, like local only. So they're like, dads and couples can play together. Play with your daughter. She's Zelda on the Switch Lite. You're Link on the TV. You're playing the exact same world and story, going through the game together, but you have independent screens and controls. Buy a Switch Lite.
And one reason
that would be a
Simmons
interesting but greedy way of selling two copies.
This game, if it's not as ambitious in terms of design as we thought it is, in terms of like world design, the only reason I can feel like it's taking so long after the original, like the earliest we think it's coming out is maybe end of next year, which would be like 3 years. Over 3 years after.
3.5 at least, more than 3.
And they said they wanted to cut down dev time, and B, if it is like reusing assets a lot, it would be, wow, that's a long time to turn around like a Zelda game. Maybe not, but anyway, what they could be doing is like, what if like the substitute is if you don't play with another human person, there's AI co-op, and they're trying to get that right.
No.
That nightmare.
No, I don't think there was a lot of
Sheva.
I don't think there was a lot of AI on the hiring pages.
Yeah, I don't think they would do that. I honestly
it would probably be.
I don't think co-op's in the works either. I think the best case you'll get
idea, but yeah,
you'll get to pick who you want to play as, and it'll just change the story path to be that character. Because
really, at the end of the day, and I'm very blunt about this. Enuma put his foot in his mouth like 2 or 3 times with Breath of the Wild when they first showed it off. With regards to the can you play as Link or Zelda, or because Link a boy or a girl kind of thing. Like his responses were like terrible, like flat out. So I'm like, I wonder if that's something they've taken back with them. Like, people really wanted to play as like Zelda or play as a girl Link. I'm like, well, Zelda wears pants now, so you can't use the dress excuse anymore, Nintendo. If you remember that from New Super Mario Brothers.
Was that what I keep thinking of the eco answer?
Miyamoto said that, like, so someone asked, like, why 2 Toads? Like, why not Peach for a new Super Mario Brothers Wii. And he's like, well, it'd be really hard to animate, a dress, doing all this stuff. And people are like, what the fuck? Like the hell, Miyamoto? So I'm like, can't use that excuse.
It's like, yeah, you don't have to give them a dress, but
like,
okay.
Okay, what? But like Zelda's wearing pants now. From the last game and this game, from what we can tell. So I'm like, and she's not even. You don't even have to worry about hair physics because she cut her hair, which to me is almost like a for sure telltale sign. I'm like,
yeah.
Zelda's probably playable because now she's got a short haircut and she's got similar attire to Link. Like, she's probably playable. They probably took some of the criticism to heart and were like, people want to playable Zelda.
It will either be you pick one or the other at the start,
That'd be
or
the
at certain
simple
points
way.
in the game you change character.
Yeah,
that will be it.
I think I'm leaning towards the former. Like
Okay.
it'll just pick one or the other.
Okay.
But that would require for Newman to figure out what Link would be doing if you're playing a Zelda. So
I know that. Yeah,
if he can
I got
figure that out in
reference.
3.5 years, like. But I mean, like, even if they could just be not AI control, but just wandering around with you, like in fucking Xenoblade.
Yeah.
Like Xenoblade 1 or even 2, where there's like 6 characters just sort of like wandering, like, they're kind of helping you or whatever. They don't have to be doing much.
Literally, the other one could just be your companion guy.
Yeah, they
like,
could just
serve as that. Like, if you're taking too long in a dungeon room, like, hey, Link, did you notice that, like, if you're Zelda...
Oh,
like,
God, I can see it.
They'll just be like, Link will just, like, go make a noise, because he won't speak, obviously.
Yeah.
Just make a thing, and she'll be like, huh, you want me to look over there? And then, like, you go over there, like, oh, thanks, Link. You know, or...
I could see that happening. Oh, God, like the puzzle spoilers.
Yeah.
I can see that happening. But, like, yeah, I'm leaning... My gut feeling is that you'll pick one or the other.
Yeah.
And you just won't see the other. They'll show up maybe in cutscenes, but like otherwise you just won't really see the other character.
That'll be such a disappointment. Like I want them to be working together or be pretty prominent. So I hope they figure something better out than that.
And Monolith can do it because they've done it with all the Xenoblade games before and stuff like that. So it's like they could just be following you along and just kind of doing menial, simple stuff, not getting in your way either. Like it's totally doable. And again, maybe that's why it's taking 3.5 years. And I know some like, well, these things take time. I'm like, Monolith works very fast, actually. If you look at the time they stopped working on Xenoblade X to Xenoblade 2 alone, was not much time. It was like 2 years. It was actually 2 years. So they stopped Xenoblade X, and then they went to salvage Breath of the Wild and Xenoblade 2, and they did both of those games within 2 years of each other. So 3.5 is actually a fairly decent chunk of time for them to complete stuff. So again, like if it is reusing assets of the same world, there's probably going to be a lot of gameplay things they add in there because if they're not worried so much about the map design, but I think they are because that was also a big chunk of their hiring was for map and overworld and level design.
I think what we were
and level design to me just says dungeon design to me. So I'm fairly certain. And here's the thing: I guarantee you the game's coming out. I would bet money the game's coming out in November next year, because Xbox Scarlet's coming out. PS5 is almost 100% sure coming out at the same time. Nintendo needs a big game to counter those launches. It's almost for sure happening. It's going to happen. But here's the thing: from what we know, next year, what is going to be the best game? What would you bet money on? The best game: 7 Remake, Cyberpunk, or Breath of the Wild 2?
No.
No? Your answer is no?
No. Oh, we actually just had this question in our EasyAllies Q&A.
Oh, no.
People
I'm
are asking
repeating.
us. They're asking us to say, well, so what's your 2020 GOTY? And like we have GOTY debates for year. Like we haven't picked this year's GOTY yet.
Well, I've heard.
Well, I'll answer it in terms of like most anticipated or which one would you think like sales wise is most likely to succeed?
Oh, that's whatever. But sales, I don't really care about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to.
I'm more just kind of like, There's what I personally like. There's what you personally feel will be yours, and then there's what you think will be the critically acclaimed one, which can be different.
Honestly, like I feel like of the three, because I'm not reviewing.
Or Halo 5, we could throw that in there too.
As I'm not reviewing Cyberpunk or Final Fantasy 7 Remake, I'm like 99.9999% sure neither one of those are going to review, so I could probably speak about those more specifically. From what I've seen, because I've actually played Final Fantasy 7 Remake, I've seen a lot of Cyberpunk 2077 in action behind closed doors, and I can say while Cyberpunk's trying to be like do a lot of ambitious stuff, Like, I think Cyberpunk has the potential if they nail everything. It probably will be like it could be the better received game. But the problem is, I think there's a lot that can go wrong with Cyberpunk because there's so many moving components and it's all new. And
That's true.
I think Final 7 Remake, what they've shown has been like knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
And we got to play, and it's like, okay, it actually plays well too for the combat.
I've got one nagging fear of 7.
What's yours?
That I don't know if a game set strictly just in Midgar is satisfying enough.
So the whole their promise that you're gonna feel like the satisfaction of a whole game.
Yeah.
Whereas it's just in one setting.
I don't know if that's I'm really fearful if they can make the game. I mean, if it's good and short and say it's only 10 hours, 10, 15 hours, fine. That's fine at least. But I would
like
fear
a 40, 50 hour game set in Midgar.
A 40, 50 hour game set just in Midgar. Because, like, yes, they're going to change the story and add stuff to it, obviously, but there's still a lot of story you can't do in Midgar alone. Like, you can't. I mean, you could maybe have Sid in there and meet him early, but that would be a pretty big departure. But it's like you're most likely not going to meet Sid. You're not going to have Vincent. You're not going to get any of Vincent's backstory. You're not going to get Cloud's backstory. You're not supposed to, anyways. You're not going to get like the true full depth of Barrett's backstory. You're not going to have his closure to Barrett's backstory. You're not going to have the closure to Nanaki Red 13's backstory. You can't do that with Midgar alone. You can't have, Aerith dying. Oh, shut up. She's been dead for 20 years. Like, you can't do that in Midgar alone. Like, no matter how much you add or change, there's still so much of the key plot points in Final Fantasy VII that can't be covered by Midgar alone. So, to me, I'm worried about, them either dragging it out for making the game too long and being stuck in one setting, or just in general. Maybe Midgar's not that interesting of a setting anymore to me. It was interesting in 1997, but with the amount of games and anime that have gone through and film that have gone through the cyberpunk setting, Midgar is no longer as interesting now as it was as a mind-blowing revelation in 97. So as good as it does, and it plays great, and as good as it looks, like generally being, hey, it's a Final Fantasy cyberpunk setting, I'm like, that's really cool. Now it's just nostalgic, but I have seen this shit before. I have seen Advent Children. I have seen Dirge of Cerberus. I have seen this before. I've been here before, technically, so I'm like, I hope they don't drag that out to a 50-hour endeavor, because I didn't finish Red Dead 2, and I was really excited for Red Dead 2, but my God, that game was a little too long. It was a little too long.
Yeah, I don't expect it to be. I expect it to be anywhere from like 25. I expect it to be Zelda length, honestly. Not Breath of the Wild, but like a traditional Zelda, which is about like 25-ish hours, honestly. Yeah. Which is
I think that's fine.
Which has always been like an excellent length for a game.
I think going to 40 to 50 hours might be really pushing the Midgar scenario a little hard.
Wonder how much it's going to be people who played the original and have A, expectations, and B, are super familiar with Midgar. How they're going to perceive whatever they do with it, whether it's like dragging it out or they concoct a lot of new stuff. Like, we've already seen hints of new original stuff in there that was never in there before. Like, wait, what are these floaty ghost things?
Yeah, well, the problem is hindsight, though, because we know where the story's going. We know what's going to happen later on in other games. So there's always going to be this thing in the back of all of our minds that we know this isn't the end of the story. We know that there's a lot of stuff that still needs to happen afterwards. So yeah, but it does play well and it does look well, so it looks good and plays well, and so like I'm still very excited for the game, but yeah, I think the best game next year will be Xenoblade Definitive Edition. Is what I'm getting at here.
Yeah,
which is a cop-out answer, I guess.
But, I mean, and that's another one where it's like just it's a Shadow of the Colossus situation where there's like,
except we know that they're adding that.
Instead of adding in the missing colossi, they actually are in this one by adding in the missing zone.
Yeah, they're adding in that left shoulder, which is enormous.
Yeah,
a huge map with whole lots of potential gameplay there. So like, if nothing else, it's going to add at least 10 hours to that already
70-80 hour game.
Murderously long game, but it was fun long. That's the one thing about it, is like, I know I complain about Red Dead 2 being too long. Well, it's too long and doesn't control well. Where Xenoblades generally tend to control well and have fun battle systems, so I can play it for that long.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all I'm getting at is Xenoblade Definitive.
Okay.
Will be the game of the year next year.
Come on. Yeah, I mean,
they did say 2020 for that one.
I championed that game. You know how much I was playing that game before it even came out here and stuff. Just like playing the Japanese version and the UK and then the UK version.
Well, okay, this is a little interesting because 10 years ago now, because that's how old the game will be next year. We imported the game, and I remember we were trying it. We didn't try it out too long.
Yeah,
but we thought it was pretty cool. We were all kind of really more jazzed for Last Story because of Sakaguchi at the time.
Yeah,
but at least I was. But like we tried it out, but then we got the European version, which came out the next year, and that's where we both became like hooked. We were like, oh, this motherfucking video game.
This is
so
really good.
Yeah, this is a game.
And then when it was coming out in North America, I was like, hey, I'm happy people are gonna finally get to play it. But it's just like
it was like a reluctant pre-order.
Easiest review I've ever written because I had already played it in English. And B, I was like,
nothing was changed.
I was like, nothing has changed. So I was like, they sent us early. I'm like, actually, I can write the review right now. And they're like, what? I'm like, I've already played the whole game. In like the official they're just taking that localization and putting it in there. You get that? Like, I've played it, I've beaten it, and it's like, oh, I'll just do capture off the US version when they send us a review copy.
You wouldn't even know the difference though.
Yeah,
there was no
difference.
difference.
To be fair, I don't
even know if they changed color with a U or color without the U.
Well, to make sure we dot all the I's and cross all the T's in terms of like following the rules, like I'll make sure all the capture is from the North American version.
Yeah.
And I just started a new game. It was great. I just played for like 10 hours on a new game, and then just only use that for review footage because like that won't spoil anything huge.
Yeah.
And then I was like, the trailers already show what happened at the beginning with Metal Face and what he does. It's like, yeah, that's not a spoiler, but everything else after that, you couldn't tell anything story-wise. I'm like, really good. I remember all the comments being like, wow, this is the most spoiler-free review Game Trailers has ever done, especially with JRPG. It's like, well, yeah, because I only used the first 10 hours because I was ready to get the sucker out.
Yeah.
Because I think they sent us the review copy early, and they said there was no embargo because the game was already out everywhere else. So it's like
the whole game was up on
and we had like
YouTube.
one of the first reviews up because I was like, well, here you go. Here's the review.
All the other people probably didn't play through all of the European
and I was
version.
like, the music, I was like, dude, everything's great on this, and biggest regret was I couldn't.
Oh yeah, and I know
robbed.
our listeners will be upset if I don't say it. I want a goddamn soundtrack in Breath of the Wild 2. That's a big one for me. Is I want fucking music in the game again.
They just need to put the music more in the forefront at certain key moments.
No,
like
all the time.
Well, just like I shouldn't have to be riding around on a horse to hear music. It's like.
But then the music is only cool after you've ridden for like a solid minute.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, it needs to. I think they need to go a little bit more into the old school direction of bombastic music here and there, like tracks in your face. Like, it works. It works with the Zelda series.
Immediately, like when Xenoblade 2 came out, I was immediately like, yeah, this is exactly.
Yeah,
this is
Xenoblade
exactly
2
what I was missing
exactly.
from Zelda's Overworld.
Yeah,
like,
I got that too.
Like, oh
Absolutely.
man, I really miss Overworld music.
I mean, it was a nice experiment. It does have very lovely tracks in there. It does have a lot, surprisingly, a lot amount of tracks.
There's good music in Breath of the Wild, but like
it's how it's presented in the game. It was presented in a unique way to complement this like minimalist approach.
Like Hyrule Castle was like, why wasn't the whole game like this? Why weren't we getting whole areas like this?
I mean, I think we'll still get like the maybe piano compositions again, but I think they'll be more. They'll be like the songs will be more in your face. I think
this will be the most interesting thing for Breath of the Wild 2 will be to see if they do anything about the way the music was, because it was very polarizing. Because I don't think everyone hated it. I think some people really liked the way it was done, and then there's people like me who really hated how it was done. So it was very polarizing. So I'm very curious to see how they go about that with Breath of the Wild 2. Was like, which side do they side with? You know, my gut says they'll probably still be very moody. Is there any composer you would pick if you were, say, the project lead, or you were Numa, and you're like, hey, pick a composer to do maybe not necessarily even cinematics, but just like music for the game, like general overworld music. Like, who's a composer you want to be doing Zelda?
Well, I mean, there are plenty of answers for that. There are a lot of answers for that. I mean, take any one of the. I would take. Would definitely take. You know what? Actually, I'm gonna go with a Here's the thing. So I was gonna say Masahiro Soken, who is the lead composer for Final Fantasy XIV.
The Realm Reborn, because didn't Nobu do
So
Vanilla?
Nobuo Uematsu did a few themes for Final Fantasy XIV that have stuck around, but he has not composed.
I thought he did all of Vanilla, and then they just dropped all his work for Vanilla.
No, it's still all there. A lot of it's still there.
Oh, okay.
So not all of it. So actually, all of it is back through certain means now.
Okay.
But since A Realm Reborn onward, Soken has been the primary composer.
Okay.
But the thing is, especially, I mean, he's a very talented composer. I don't know how well he does Zelda music. I mean, a lot of it is unique new themes. A lot of it is reworking classic Final Fantasy themes, doing a whole new take on them.
Yeah.
Which is freaking fantastic. I guess I would kind of want that for Zelda. Is like someone to come in, take established Zelda themes, and kind of like play with them and turn them on their head in certain points to create really unique, new sounding versions of them that just kind of like Cass's version of the Zelda music.
Yeah.
Was like probably that one moment for me when he starts busting it out on the accordion. I'm like, yo, I love this. I want more of this. I'm not getting more of this though.
Cass was super disappointed because when he kept saying he had a song for an area, I thought originally there was going to be a different song he'd play for each area you found him in. And he didn't. He just played
it's just the lyrics.
I was like, fuck. I got real excited for half a moment there, and which is again something they could do for part 2. But I've said this before. My goofball pick, not goofball actually. I
feel like
if you were going, if you're going atmospheric. Like not like okay, if you wanted to make it more classic style, I'd say Mitsuda, of course. But like my pick for like if you wanted to stay more atmospheric, I would say David Wise.
Oh, I did not expect that one.
Thinking about like Snake Pass, Tropical Freeze, and like the music he's done for those games, the atmospheric music he's done, especially more recently, I'm like he's my number one choice to do an atmospheric, overworlds and areas of the map for Zelda. He's actually the one I champion hard. I'm like, I think David Wise, and he said he would love to do it, but he knows he probably never will. But I'm like, I would actually really like to hear David Wise's like take on Zelda, especially his more recent, sound that he does nowadays. So I'm like, that is my goofball pick. If there were, I don't even want to say goofball, just like let's say out of left field. My out of left field pick is like, look, you still want to do atmospheric. No one does atmospheric like David Wise, so you should do David Wise. I forget the name of the composer who was like the lead. It was the Animal Crossing composer who did Breath of the Wild, and I'm like, drop her. I'm not a fan. Not a fan.
Well, I was good. Yeah, because like when we talk about crazy picks, I mean like other game series have fantastic music, but I don't know if their style would translate well to Zelda. I mean, love Persona's soundtracks, but they're very stylish. Yeah. They're not, and they're like a lot of jazz, a lot of like rock here and there, but a lot of like electro beat music in them too as well. But I don't think that would necessarily fit Zelda. Like Nier Automata's soundtrack.
Abe,
yeah. Abe stuff is really freaking good, and I think it's a little too dramatic for Zelda.
He did Tekken music before.
I heard that. Yeah, he did Tekken music, and Tekken music's pretty good. So
it's very clubby, but it's nothing like Nier music.
So I mean, but yeah, that's the thing. Like, I don't want to like sell any composer short, where they can where they have they obviously are very talented, and they could probably make a very well crafted Zelda feeling soundtrack. So I don't want to sell anyone short. But I like your crazy pick though. I like going with someone a little bit more out of the box that would probably never have a chance for that. I mean, like I'm trying to think of some like good like getting Toby Fox or whatever.
Oh yeah.
To do like Zelda sound, because we just got Cadence of Hyrule done by
one guy. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. But they'd be good for like shrine music. If they're still doing shrine stuff.
Yeah.
So, there's that. But that's I guess our State of the Union for Zelda 2019.
Gareth Coker, I think. The Ori and the Blind.
That was Ori.
Yeah, that would be a good pick.
Yeah, I would absolutely be down with that. So, if you guys want to reach Mike at any way, you can. What's the best way to get a hold of you or any of your work?
Our stuff's we're at EasyAllies, so youtube.com/EasyAllies. We're also supported through Patreon, so patreon.com/EasyAllies is where you can find all of our stuff. That YouTube channel that Patreon. We also have Twitch, twitch.tv/EasyAllies. And all of our social media stuff is just like at EasyAllies. You can follow us on all those platforms as well. And find all of my stuff and all the other guys' stuff there as well.
All right, fantastic. So I've got producers to thank. So for this, of course, you can you can find me on Twitter at DoomAssistMe and twitch.tv/AssistMeDoom. And then Andrew is Funk Machine, PhunkMachine. He'll be back probably next week, I imagine. But for our producers, I'm going to give a shout out to Online Persona, Mr. Brannon, Heavenly Booty Bandit, Melty Jack, Hockey Kong 64, Screwnami, Gigas Kronos, M Ninja 21, Top 35, Captain Piddles, Ziggy Z, Rasputin's Dick, and Miles Uncharted. Once again, our dude of the week is Dammit Reeves. And thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming on this little emergency fill and roll, Mike. And we will see you guys next week at patreon.com/YoVideoGamesPodcast. Later, dudes.